Happy, beautiful Tuesday, June 24th. My name is Dawn Pearl-George, and I'm the Executive Director of the Macula Vision Research Foundation. And it is a distinct honor and pleasure to play that role. A couple of things. First of all, have a few announcements. Please make sure, the 21st century housekeeping announcement that your cell phones or any of your electronics are turned off, because we want to make sure that you get everything you can out of today. So we appreciate that. Second of all, we try very, very hard to stay on time and stick with the agenda. And we know there's a lot of information to pack into a very short time frame. So we just want to be respectful of the time here, but we also want to give you the opportunity to ask questions and learn as much as you can today. So thanks for taking your time out this morning to be here. The other thing I want to mention in terms of housekeeping are the bathrooms, very important. The piece of information are to the back of the room, and then turn to your left, and then again just partway down the corridor, okay? So that's important. There are refreshments in the back. Hopefully you've had some fruit or some water, a little coffee before we get started. We will be taking a break later, so that'll give you a chance to either get more food or water, or go do what you need to do, take a little stretch, what have you, okay? We want to get started, and the first speaker, can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. And please tell me if you can't, because that's important. We want to get started with our first presenter, but before we do that, we want to tell you a little bit about Macula Vision Research Foundation. For those of you who either have known us for a long time, we've been around 17 years, or who are just getting to know us, we have a short video that's going to tell our story. So please turn your attention to the screen. Thank you.
Macular degeneration is slowly robbing the sight of 11 million Americans. By the year 2020, this number is expected to be more than 20 million people. But we see a clearer future. We know a cure is on the horizon. Over the past 20 years, MVRF has given $20 million to the top scientists conducting the most credible and promising research around the world. For decades, macular degeneration was a mystery, something that happened to people as a part of aging. Now, because of MVRF-funded research, scientists know the nature of AMD. They are pioneering leading-edge genetic discoveries, plumbing the very depths of this devastating disease. Our work is fueling even more discoveries. Through gene therapy, we are now reversing childhood blindness and continue to make headway in advanced treatment methods for wet and dry AMD. We see macular degeneration going the way of polio and smallpox, a relic of the past, a footnote of history. We believe we're closing in. We're working every day so millions of people can keep their precious vision. It's the reason our founders, the Lotman family, started MVRF, where 100% of every dollar donated goes directly to research in the field. That's a vision we can get used to. That's a world we can believe in, because believing is seeing. MVRF is a 501c3 public charity, and we rely on support from believers like you. Thank you.
So that's a little bit about us. Okay. Now I realize, thank you. I realize that you didn't come here to listen to me, but I'm going to moderate the conversation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Alexander J. Brucker. Dr. Brucker is a retina specialist with Shea Eye Institute, the University of Pennsylvania. He's world-renowned. Many of you may be patients of his or know Dr. Brucker and know of his tremendous dedication and commitment to the field. He's been in practice for 35 years. He allowed me to say that. Right, Dr. Brucker? And I do want to make a little call out to Dr. Brucker. MVRF as an organization owes a lot to Dr. Brucker and his leadership over the last several years. I don't know if he knows, or sees himself as this, but as the executive director, I actually see him as the father of this SupportSight program and the incredible work that we do in the areas of research to find a cure for all of you and millions of others who suffer from macular degeneration and other retina-related diseases. That's our emphasis. But he was instrumental in helping us build the organization from the beginning in terms of providing these educational seminars and the programming so that we can help those of you who live with the disease. So we want to thank him for that, and we're very happy to have him with us again today.
Thank you very much. Hello. Does this one work? Is this one working? There we go. Well, let me welcome all of you to this session of SupportSight, Macular Vision Research Foundation's meeting, and I'm thrilled that we're having this meeting. I'd like to first acknowledge the fact that without Herb Lotman and his family, this organization would not exist, and it is unfortunate that he has recently passed away. For those of you who knew him, you know what we've lost. For those of you who did not know him, you really missed an opportunity of knowing and meeting a wonderful individual. But his spirit and his commitment to all of you is carried now by his daughter, Shelley Fisher, who is in the audience, and it is my pleasure to welcome Shelley to this meeting. Let me take 1 minute of my time and tell you that when Macular Vision Research Foundation was developed, it was developed to support research. And I went back to Herb and I said, Herb, research is part of it. It's going to find the cure. But we have a problem today, and the problem today is that we, the doctors, sit in the office, see patients all day long, crank them out, using the expression, seeing them one after the other, and we really don't have time to answer their questions. We really don't have time to talk to them in any length, and we really need a way of talking to the families and the patients about macular degeneration. And I said, why don't we have a symposium like today's in which we can just talk and answer questions and express some of the things that I know they're concerned about. And the first time I met with him, he said, no, MVRF is just for research. And then a year later, I met with him and I said, Herb, how can we do this? He said, well, you know, maybe we can do it, but. And the third time I sat down with him, he said, I think it's a great idea. It was his idea. It was a great idea. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is that he bought into it, and he bought into it because he realized that while we're doing the research in the lab, and I have 5 people full-time doing research with me, what we don't have is the ability to sit down in the office when we have 30, 40, 50 patients and talk to the patients and their family. So the first question I'm going to ask, because I'm going to answer your questions, and I'm going to try to give you as much information as I can in this short period of time, is let me see the hands of those of you who are affected by macular degeneration. Now, let me see the hands of the family members and caretakers who are here who don't have macular degeneration but are coming along. Probably a good third of the people in the room. And it shows you how important a session like this is and how important it was for Herb and myself and Lee Bramnick, who's also sitting in the room, for many years to travel around the United States and talk to people such as yourselves. And the reason is because macular degeneration is a disease which is all-encompassing. It not only takes our vision, but it takes away our independence, and it makes us very unsure of ourselves and unsure of our future. We can't see the food on our plate, and we can't see our grandchildren, and it's heartbreaking. Therefore, we need to do the research to find ways of preventing the disease, and we need to find ways of treating the disease, and we need to find ways of aiding those people who have the disease. And that's what MVRF is all about, and that's why your contributions are so important. And my contribution to you today is my time, my energy, and my knowledge. And it's my pleasure to contribute to all of you. So let's talk about macular degeneration a little bit. The macula is a portion of the eye that we see with. Now, when we talk about the eye is like an automobile. It's got wheels, it's got a steering wheel, it's got an engine. There's lots of parts to it that function. So if somebody says they're blind, it doesn't mean that they're blind from macular degeneration. They may be blind from other diseases, like an automobile, that cause the automobile to break down. If a car breaks down, you don't know if it ran out of gas or it's got a flat tire. But when we talk about macular degeneration, we're talking about one thing and one thing only, the macula, which is in a way like the engine of the car. We're not talking about the gas tank, the wheels, the transmission. We're only talking about the engine. So the macula is the central portion of vision that you see with. And because the central portion of vision is what you see with, many people who have macular degeneration have perfectly good peripheral vision. And therefore, the caregivers and family members don't understand, well, you can see me, you can walk around the room, why can't you see your food on your plate or to read an envelope? It's because the macula is only the central portion of your vision. I don't need to explain that to those of you who have the condition, but let me take a second for those of you who don't have the condition. For the caregivers, I'd like you to do the following. I'd like you to put your thumb up on one of your hands. Just put your thumb up, and now I want you to bring that thumb close to your eye, right close to your eye, and I want you to cover or close the other eye. I want you to close the other eye and just bring one finger up. Now, when you look straight ahead at your thumb, you can see everything on the sides of the thumb, but everything in the middle of your thumb, you can't see. That's what macular degeneration is all about. You don't have the ability to see in the middle, but you do have the ability to see to the sides. And that's what macular degeneration is. Now, the other thing that you need to understand is that there are two forms of macular degeneration. There's the wet form and the dry form. And this is the one question that I get asked all the time, and I'm going to try to make this relatively easy for you to understand. If a patient is a diabetic, they take insulin to bring their blood sugars to a normal level. If a patient has heart disease, they take pills to make their heart even. They don't have any irregularity of the beats, and they do well. If a patient has macular degeneration and there is fluid in the macula, it causes blurred vision. This fluid can be in the form of bleeding or simply leakage, fluid, water. When the patient has macular degeneration of the wet type and fluid gets in the macula and causes blurred vision, our goal as physicians is to dry out the fluid. If we can dry out the fluid, we're doing two things. We're stopping the blood vessels that are leaking, and we're often improving vision. The fluid makes the vision blurred, so we get the fluid to go away to make the vision better or stable, and we stop the blood vessels from leaking. And again, that leakage can be either bleeding, red blood cells, you know what a cut on your finger looks like, or just oozing of fluid. So our objective is to give you medicine to dry out the macula and improve your vision. Well, then patients come in and say, Dr. Brucker, my macula is dry. Don't I have dry macular degeneration? The answer is no. Like a diabetic, if you give them insulin and their blood sugars come back to normal, they're still a diabetic. If we have a patient with wet macular degeneration and we dry them out with medicine, they still have the wet form of macular degeneration, but it's now dry. There's no fluid. I hope that makes sense to you, because it really is the question that I get asked the most. So if we have a patient with wet macular degeneration, fluid gets under the retina and causes blurred vision. If we have a patient with dry macular degeneration, that means that their retina, the tissue in the back of their eye, has dried up like brown grass in the field, and it doesn't work anymore. Once that retina becomes dried out and dry macular degeneration occurs, vision is lost not because it's blurred, not because there's fluid, but because there's no tissue to carry the impulses, the vision, to the brain where we see. So dry macular degeneration is simply the death of cells in the macular portion of the eye. And again, the macula is just like the engine of a car. It's right smack in the middle of the eye, and it's the thing that we see with. So we have the dry macular degeneration and the wet macular degeneration. So the wet macular degeneration, where we have the fluid and leakage, is where we give these injections. Well, why do we give injections? We now know that macular degeneration is driven, using the scientific word, driven by a thing called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. And that VEGF is liberated in all of your eyes. But when it gets out of control, it starts to cause patients to have blood vessels that leak in the back of their eye. And when we give this medicine, we give the medicine to make that VEGF go away. We make it go away so that it doesn't cause you any harm anymore. It's like when a person has an allergy and you take an antihistamine and it makes the allergy go away. The roses are still there and the pollen's still there, it's just not causing you to have a problem because you take the medicine. The same way as when we give these injections, we make this VEGF go away, and now the blood vessels don't grow, they don't leak, and your macula dries up and your vision improves. Not everybody responds the same way to medicine. Not everybody dries up when we give them these injections. And as it turns out, as you know, there are multiple antibiotics. There's tetracycline and minicin and penicillin and vancomycin and lots of antibiotics for different purposes. Well, there are lots of drugs that we give as well for the wet form of macular degeneration. You can have Avastin, Lucentis, or Eylea. They basically work the same. And what your doctor gives is up to the doctor and also up to his experience or her experience in dealing with you as the patient. But these three drugs are basically the same. And these three drugs have been developed through much research. The research starts with the test tube in the laboratory. It then starts with clinical trials, what's called randomized clinical trials. And then it goes on to use in the clinics. We have multiple clinical trials at the Shea Eye Institute at the University of Pennsylvania. We have multiple clinical trials looking at different drugs even today. And we have made tremendous headway in the treatment of wet macular degeneration. While most patients don't go blind from this disease anymore, many of the patients do, over time, lose some vision, and there are many patients who don't respond to the injections. And for that reason, we have to give injections on a monthly basis, month after month after month. Sometimes we can spread out the injections, and instead of monthly, we can give it every 6 weeks. And if they're dry, we may spread it out to every 8 weeks. And you may have heard the term treat and extend. And sometimes we'll even take it out to 3 months or more. But most patients, like the diabetic who takes insulin or the heart patient who has to take heart medication, most patients with macular degeneration need to take the injections from time to time for most of their life, at least today, because we are working on new drugs that will last longer. Instead of 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, they may last 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, or 6 months. So there are multiple studies being done to try to find a way of giving perhaps 1 injection a year instead of 1 injection a month. And this is for the wet form of macular degeneration. So we have treatments for this condition, and in general, we would all say that this is a miracle cure. And it's a miracle treatment because before you all were around, when I was already practicing medicine, almost all my patients eventually went blind. I had some of them that responded. 60% of patients responded to treatment, 60% of those that responded got a recurrence, and most of those eventually lost their vision. And that was from what we call the macular photocoagulation study, another clinical study that was worthwhile doing, and it moved us to where we are today. But now we have another challenge, and that challenge is dry macular degeneration. What do we do about that brown grass in our lawn? We need to find a way of stopping that brown, dried area from getting bigger and bigger and bigger and spreading. We need to find a way of preventing dry macular degeneration from sapping the vision of patients who don't respond to anti-VEGF medications, Avastin, Lucentis, and Eylea. And we are now doing multiple clinical trials throughout the United States to find treatments for dry form of macular degeneration. There is no acceptable treatment today, period. I hear all kinds of stories. Well, I heard that in Russia they're giving injections. Yeah, they're giving injections. They don't work, but they're giving injections. And I heard somebody went to South America and they got an infusion of medicine and it cured their dry macular degeneration. Terrific. Show me the patient. So today we have many trials that are ongoing, including gene therapy, including injections underneath the retina, what's called stem cell transplantation, where you take a cell and you put it underneath the retina and you hope that it's growing. It's a little bit like seeding the lawn. If you have a brown spot on the lawn and you scrape that brown spot away and put new seed down, you hope that new grass is going to grow. And that's exactly what gene therapy and stem cell therapy is all about. You go underneath the disease portion, you inject something, and you hope that you get a visual result. Those are experimental trials that are being done, and they're being done very successfully in some areas, and many of us are very hopeful that they'll be available, but they take years and years and years to develop, and they're far from being developed at this point. There's also this telescope that you've heard about, that doctors say, well, we can put a telescope in your eye. And that's true. They can put a telescope in the eye. But unfortunately, that telescope has had a problem. The first problem is that you don't put it in somebody who has a good eye. If your right eye is good and your left eye is bad, why put a telescope in the left eye when the right eye is perfectly okay? Doesn't make any sense. So that telescope is used in patients who have both eyes are usually bad. And how does that telescope work? It takes images and magnifies them in the back of the eye. Can the procedure be done? Yes. Are most patients with macular degeneration happy with it? Unfortunately not. And unfortunately, many of the patients who have had the telescope ask that the telescope be taken out. So while there is a telescope that's available, I can't say that it's gotten rave reviews, and I think that the physician who's doing the procedure and the patient needs to spend a lot of time talking about the pluses and minuses before they make a commitment to have a surgical procedure to have the implantation of a device that may or may not help them. So when we look at the wet form of macular degeneration and the dry form of macular degeneration, we appreciate that they're both involving the central portion of vision, and there's much to be done to prevent the loss of vision. One of the things that you should know is that we do have the supplements, the vitamin supplements. And these vitamin supplements have been studied now for several decades, and they're called the ARIDS supplements. And let me give you a little piece of personal comment that there really is only one supplement that all of you should be using. And that's the supplement with lutein and zeaxanthin in it. All of the other supplements that have all of these other cockamamie vitamins and supplements in them that can be very expensive are not proven and are probably unnecessary. I don't get any money, I don't get any kickbacks, I have no stock in Bausch & Lomb, but the ARIDS formulation, the Preservision 2, ARIDS 2, which is now the new green bottle with a tiny little red tag on it, is the one that I advise patients to take. And there isn't a day that goes by in my practice that one of my old patients or new patients, and I don't mean old in years, acknowledged, one of my patients will come in carrying a bottle and saying, Dr. Brucker, my friend told me in the beauty parlor that I should take these pills. And I say, how many times have I told you? It's the green pill with the green label with the red tag on the top. Well, my beautician said that so let me tell you, it doesn't matter who does your nails or who does your hair. I'm telling you, you need to do it. For those guys who don't have a lot of hair like the guy in the front row here, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. So let me open up the floor to a few questions that you may have, and maybe I can answer and get a few questions answered. But let me tell you one thing that's very, very important. I don't want any of you to tell me about your case. Very hard. I don't want you to say, well, my doctor told me, or I've been doing. I don't want to do that. You catch me in the corner and I'll give you a private consultation and you don't have to pay me, okay? But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to ask me about questions about you, because everybody wants to ask questions, and if you personalize it, then I can't talk in generalities. So after I give you that kind of comment, let's see what we can do. So here's a microphone. Let's see how many questions we can get done.
Okay. You just mentioned take it with lutein, these ARIDS, take it with that formula. Then why is the other formula still out there, and is there a contraindication for anybody not to do the lutein?
Okay, so the formulation that's now used today is vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, copper, lutein, and zeaxanthin. Those are the 6 chemicals that should be in the drug. The active formulations are the zeaxanthin, lutein. Those are the ones that are controversial. The issue really is that if you take that formulation, that has been shown in both the ARIDS and the ARIDS 2 to be the formulation that works. There are pills that have other things, magnesium, have fish oil. All of those have been studied, and none have been shown to be of any benefit whatsoever. Why are they still on the market? They're still on the market because there's no control in food supplements. Finally, the concern had been that if you were using the vitamin A preparation, that there is a risk of cancer in those who smoke. And lung cancer was reported in a Canadian study. It's again controversial, but the reason that was eliminated from the vitamin supplements is because it was not shown to be better than the lutein. But in fact, when the study was started, lutein was not available in the right formulation, and therefore the vitamin A was used, beta-carotene. But that should not be used today. It's not necessary. Let's have another.
Here, right here.
Just with regard to ARIDS, though, they still have the formula.
Of course, it's a vitamin company that makes a lot of money.
And it's the ARIDS, it's got the...
It says ARIDS because that was the original formulation. If you want to drive your 1975 Chevrolet, you can do that too, but You got to come up to the modern times. Get the green label with the red tag. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I've been told that Stargardt's disease or Stargardt's maculopathy is a form of juvenile macular degeneration. And I was wondering whether that is most similar to dry macular degeneration. And if someone was diagnosed with Stargardt's disease like 30 years ago, is there any, is there likely to be any change in their vision as they age?
Okay, so the dry form of macular degeneration is very, very similar to Stargardt's disease, and Stargardt's disease and fundus flavimaculatus are terms that are used to describe what is juvenile macular degeneration, because it does occur in younger age people, and it is the drying of the macula, the cells in the macula, and it is a very similar end result. If I lifted my shirt and I showed you a scar on my belly, you wouldn't know if I had my gallbladder removed or somebody tried to stab me who didn't like me. You would only see a scar on my belly. In dry macular degeneration, whether it be from age-related macular degeneration or Stargardt's, the end result is very similar, a dry patch, yes. Let's have another 2 questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. Yes?
One over here and one in the back.
Regarding the dry macular degeneration, I'm sorry, no, it's okay. What is the drusen the dry area that you're speaking of, this dried out area, and why is it at risk for turning into wet?
Great, great, great question. So that's not to say the other question wasn't good. It's just a great question. So drusen are little white deposits in the back of the eye. They're excrescences on what's called Bruch's membrane. Bruch's membrane is a layer on the bottom of what's called the pigment epithelial cells. Now, the pigment epithelial cells are like the incinerator. Our rods and cones, the thing in the retina that we use to see, we see color and we see dark. The rods and cones, little by little, generate new rods and cones. And when the old rods and cones are used up, they go into the pigment epithelial cells. And when they go into the pigment epithelial cells, they get eaten up by the pigment epithelial cells and discharged. And they get discharged through Bruch's membrane. But sometimes, and I know none of you ever get constipated, but sometimes Bruch's membranes get constipated, and it gets plugged up with these little deposits from the pigment epithelial cells. And those little constipated deposits are called drusen. Patients who have macular degeneration always have drusen. Always. If you don't have drusen, you have to look for another disease. Period. But if you have drusen, if any of you have drusen, it does not mean that you have to develop macular degeneration. Most people who have drusen are considered to be at risk for developing macular degeneration, and those are the patients that we put on the vitamin supplements. So if you're a family member, if you have children who have eye examinations and they're known to have drusen, they should all be on the vitamin supplements. And why are they on the vitamin supplements? Because the vitamin supplements have been proven, unlike regular vitamins, the vitamin supplements in the ARIDS showed and proved that you could decrease the conversion from the drusen to the wet form of macular degeneration. You can prevent the development of the wet form. Anybody who has drusen who isn't taking vitamins needs their heads examined, because it's obvious that taking a food supplement can lower your risk for developing the wet form of macular degeneration. So if you have macular degeneration that's wet in one eye, you should be on the vitamin supplements because you want to prevent it from developing in the other eye. And that's a question that we get asked all the time. Well, I have wet macular degeneration, I'm getting injections, should I take the vitamins anymore? Yes, because we want to prevent it from happening in the other eye. And after both eyes, I would say that you don't need to use those vitamins on a regular basis. They've never been studied, and you could use $18 a month to buy a multivitamin like a Centrum Silver.
about we take a question in the back? You have a question in the back here? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, give him a back question.
Good morning. You used the term basically several times. You were referring to the centers of Aston and Elia. Well, I think that's what it's called. Understand when you say basically, they're similar, but there must be a difference if you use the term basically, or if they're not, why are they there?
The question is, what's the difference between the drugs and why are there multiple drugs? The answer is pretty simple. Competition and money. If I can develop a new car like the Tesla, why do I need it if there's a Bentley out there? The answer is because you can make money off of it. The other answer is because hopefully one drug is going to work better than the other. So pharmaceutical companies are out there to help patients and to try to find new technology. When the Eylea was developed, which is ranibizumab and bevacizumab, and these drugs are being developed, the reason for being developed is to hopefully find that they're better than the preceding drug. So Eylea was developed with the hopes that it would be a 6 or 8 week drug rather than a 4-week drug. Are they basically the same? Yes, they've been shown to be basically the same. But that's like an antibiotic, that's like a skin cream, that's like a heart medicine. Multiple drugs are developed for the same disease because they hope that one drug will be better than the other. And we hope that that'll be the case also.
Okay.
All right, well, there's no time right now for any other questions, but I'll stick around and maybe we'll have a chance to answer a few more questions a little bit later. I hope this has been helpful to you, not only yourselves, but your caregivers, and if there's anything that any of us can do, let us know. You can call MVRF, the Macular Vision Research Foundation, if you have any questions, or you can get in touch with me directly. And Shelley, thank you for being here and supporting MVRF.
Wow. I wish we could keep him up here for a couple more hours, right? What a chock full of information, and every time I hear Dr. Brucker, I learn something new. So, but we'll get him to stick around and maybe answer a few more questions. So, next on the agenda is I'd like to introduce our next presentation by Dr. Georgia Crozier. Georgia has also been a longtime friend of MVRF. She is with the Moore Eye Institute. Many of you may seek your care there and or recognize the name. Georgia has dedicated her career to the profession as low vision specialist in her capacity, and she's been doing it for over 30 years. I know she doesn't look like it, but she started when she was very young, huh, Georgia? Okay, so please come on up. George is going to talk to us. Are you comfortable now?
Yes.
Okay. You just have to kind of put it by your chest.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the Macular Vision Research Foundation, and especially the late Mr. Herb Lotman, for their vision in organizing today and the foundation to research vision loss. 6 months ago, when Dawn George invited me to join today's presenters, I thought, how could I make the audience understand how critical the eye team is to their eye health and vision preservation? Dr. Brucker, clearly one of the leaders in the field of retinal surgery, would be the captain of the ship. He will be the one that will diagnose, treat, and manage the changes in the retina that can change your vision. Myself, the low vision specialist, would work with the functional vision and the needs and design optical equipment to maximize your existing vision. Occupational therapists like Dr. Whitaker, who you'll hear on the panel, would instruct and coach your use of these low vision devices. And no less important are the manufacturers like Optelec, that's here today with us, who produce the equipment to match the needs of the patients and are constantly improving current equipment to enhance and simplify your vision needs. I am here today to discuss why do you need to see another eye doctor and how can the low vision specialist help? The low vision specialist is the doctor that organizes the patient's vision rehabilitation. The low vision or a vision impairment affects the way you see. It should not affect the way you live. 5 easily remembered questions will help all patients receive appropriate and necessary eye care. Who, why, how, when, and what. Who should they see? Why? Why is it necessary to see another different type of eye doctor? How can they help? When should you make an appointment to see a low vision doctor? And what? What will be accomplished at this examination? So first, who is the low vision specialist? It's an optometrist or ophthalmologist who is trained to evaluate your reduced vision, prescribe visual devices, and teach people how to use them. The important thing in that statement is the first word was not sell. They do not sell optical or non-optical devices without first examining, demonstrating, potentially teaching the patient how to use the device, and hopefully loaning the device for home use in your environment. Why? Why should you see another eye doctor? Why should you add another doctor to your list of current doctors? Well, if you're visually impaired and are being treated by an ophthalmologist, and you ask them about low vision services and devices, and they say nothing more can be done, find a low vision specialist on your own. Call the County Association for the Blind. Call the state agency, the Bureau of Blindness and Vision Services. Call the VA. Go to a support group meeting. Talk to friends and family. Research it on the internet. How? How can these doctors help? A low vision examination takes hours, multiple visits. It really requires a conversation between the doctor and the patient to decide on goals together. And these goals need to be realistic and attainable. The patient will be asked many questions about his visual functioning. Believe me, vision rehabilitation is not just a pair of glasses. It incorporates optical devices, non-optical devices, and other vision rehabilitation professionals, rehabilitation teachers, orientation and mobility instructors, occupational therapists. When should you be seen? The beginning of your medical treatment, during your medical treatment, after your medical treatment. It's not the same for every patient, but it should be initiated when your vision is deteriorating and you're noticing a change in your lifestyle. You're not functioning the way you were. You're ignoring things. You're not doing what you did and what you like to do. And what is done at this examination? Low vision is the loss of your best corrected vision. As Dr. Brucker said, oftentimes with the macula, it's the central vision. And it's caused by disease or injury or heredity. Sometimes it means a decrease in vision and/or a decrease in visual field, and/or increased light sensitivity, and/or distorted vision, and a loss of contrast. It can be everything. And what will the low vision specialist do? Well, foremost, hopefully answer your questions. Hopefully have the ability and the time to spend time with you and answer your questions, and explain to you about your vision loss. Reassure you. They will recommend low vision devices that are task specific. Finally, I'd like to close with 2 statements. Never, ever, ever buy anything from a catalog without first being examined
or receiving a recommendation from a low vision doctor. And it's not an eye doctor that does low vision, it's a specially trained low vision doctor. And secondly, every low vision patient is unique. The person sitting next to you today maybe has the same visual acuity and maybe has the same needs, but every patient is unique. Every patient is solved with different devices and different recommendations. Every patient has a story to tell, and the job of the low vision specialist and the team of eye doctors is to listen. Thank you. I think Dawn is coming up to, if anybody has any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Crozier. Sorry about that. I was tending to something in the back of the room. Okay, so does that answer the question why you need to see another doctor? Does that make sense? You have a plan together. It's a team to help you in your own personal situation. Now, we'd like to have Dr. Crozier answer questions that you may have in the audience. So we've got some hands up, Lynn.
Okay. In the pretty blue?
If you have a normally scheduled appointment for a refraction with your ophthalmologist, does the low vision specialist take the place of your ophthalmologist? Say, even if you see a retinologist for treatment, should you see your ophthalmologist and a low vision specialist?
Great question.
Okay. The question is in reference to how should you organize your eye doctor appointments. And I always say to the patient, you should see whoever you feel most comfortable with. Usually patients are seeing a low vision specialist for a finite period of time. Usually it's 3 to 6 visits, and usually they come in with specific goals. Once those goals are attained, then I usually say you're ready to go back to your retinologist or your general ophthalmologist or general optometrist. The eyeglass prescription is one of the first things that we accomplish in a low vision exam. And invariably, the prescription we will develop with you is slightly different than what you may have from a routine exam. So I always tell patients, go to your regular ophthalmologist or optometrist, but don't fill the prescription until you're seen by the low vision specialist, because 9 times out of 10 we do make some modifications in it. And it may not be a change or a correction, but it just may be how you're going to use the prescription. Sometimes it's better to have glasses that are only for TV and glasses that are only for reading as opposed to a bifocal. Is that clear?
Any other questions? Oh, here. All right.
Hi, can you give examples of a couple other devices, perhaps, that a low vision specialist will recommend?
Sure. The question is in reference to optical devices. And I said that before in the conversation that the optical devices are task specific. And what that means is that if you want to watch television, that's something that's done at a distance. So distance devices would be things that are telescopic. Most of you have used binoculars in the past, and binoculars are basically 2 telescopes glued together. So telescopes take images that are at a distance of 5 to 20 feet and magnify them onto the retina. Like Dr. Brucker said, we magnify, make the picture bigger. Things that are closer, like reading or writing or seeing the food on your plate, that would be a different type of system that would work at a closer range. Handheld magnifiers are similar to something that's done at closer range. They're used for spotting. So if you wanted to see a price tag or a label or a thermostat, you would use a handheld magnifier. If you wanted to sit and read long-term, or you wanted to write a letter or look at birthday cards or photographs, some of the equipment in the back, the portable and the stationary closed-circuit televisions, would encompass that need. So there are 3 really versions of optical devices: distance, near, and long-term. And then there's a whole gamut of non-optical devices, which would be things that are filters or sunglasses, or things like you were handed out today, the bold pens and bold-lined paper. It really is the volume of things to help visually impaired patients is enormous. The biggest challenge is making you aware of what's available and you deciding what would be helpful for you.
Other questions? Anybody in the back? Oh, yes, we have one.
I just had a quick question also about devices. If there's, I know that Google is making those kind of glasses that are super high tech. Is there any research done that those industries could also support this foundation and the research towards those devices?
The question is Google, the Google glasses being used for low vision patients?
Well, I was just thinking that technology, if that industry was also supporting the devices for macular degeneration.
I have to ask Dr. Brucker. I'm not aware of any interaction of research with any of the technological companies like Google and low vision. Are you?
There has been, from the standpoint...
We'll get you the mic.
Thank you. There has been advances, and I have actually had an opportunity of using it and meeting with the developers of the Google Glass.
Great.
It's kind of shocking to be able to walk around the room and see a television set as you're walking around a room. It's very, very advantageous, and I think that there will be a place in low vision, treatment of low vision patients with that.
That's great.
Any more questions? No?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crozier. Again, this is all, not only is it the purpose of today to better understand the disease and macular degeneration, but also to help you learn and adapt and kind of inject different tools and ideas, whether they're low tech, medium tech, or high tech, into your lives to, again, help you be more comfortable with your vision impairment and remain independent as long as you can. So, the next item on the agenda is actually a break. And before we do that, we're a little ahead of time, which is wonderful. Before we do that, let me just make a couple of comments. And one is that I wanted to do a quick call out or a shout out to Dr. Brucker did mention Ms. Lee Bramnick. And Lee is with us in the audience. And I just wanted to give her a round of applause. Lee worked feverishly, tirelessly, roaming all over the country to build the foundation, the Macular Vision Research Foundation. And as I understand, did 32 of these seminars a year at one point in lots of key cities around the country. So Lee is a huge advocate of ours, and always will be, I believe. And she's also a tremendous advocate for the vision impaired community. And I just want to recognize her tremendous dedication. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Many of you may know Lee. I will get you the mic, Lee. Hang on.
Give up this mic. I will.
It is truly an honor and a privilege and a very special pleasure to know how this foundation is growing and the commitment and the care of the Lotman family and Shelley Fisher and Dawn, and it's a great honor to see it grow. And any way I can ever be helpful, please know that I'm available. I wish you all great success.
Okay, thank you, Lee, very much. We couldn't do this without you. Okay, so we will take a short break, again, to move around a little bit, to check out, if you want to look at some of the demo products. We'll only take 10 minutes, and, we'll come right back and continue the program. Thank you. All right, thank you so much. So this next half of the program is a panel discussion, all right? And also will involve questions and answers, because one of the things one of our goals is to, again, make this interactive and, of course, bring the experts to you and give you an opportunity to ask the questions of what's on your mind. Because after all, when you understand something better, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? So that's a huge goal of ours. Also, I wanted to mention very quickly before we get started that we are creating a video of this entire session, and that will be in a couple of days on our website, mvrf.org, and also YouTube. So I see a lot of people taking copious notes, which is wonderful, but you'll also be able to watch it again so you can kind of, process it, let it digest again. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'm sure you can just get one of your grandkids or somebody to help you, right? Okay. The other thing is Macular Vision Research Foundation is in the 21st century. I'm happy to announce that because of some sponsorship relationships that we have, particularly with Optelec and our other funding partners for our SupportSight program, we have developed a new app, and we're launching it today, so you are the first to know. Now, you might say, what is an app? I've heard of those things, and it's not short for Apple, although you can view them on an Apple, okay? So there's like a postcard. I have one here in your packets. So we invite you to go out there to Google Play or the iTunes Store and download that app and just check it out. We're very excited about it, and we'd love you to have it. We think it's going to be very useful, and again, we're moving to the new generation here, right? Okay, so this is the card. And Nikki's wandering around, and if you have an iPhone with you or whatever, she can help you do it if you need it. All right, good. So, before the panel gets started, I have a new friend. And I'm in the business of making friends, okay, like all of you. But I have a really special new friend who's up here on the panel today, and his name is Charlie Collins. And Charlie comes to us through our partnership with Optelec. He works with them. He's also an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a father. And he's just an extraordinary human being. And the one thing you might not know about Charlie is he was diagnosed with juvenile macular degeneration at the age of 9. Okay? And Charlie goes around the country, works tirelessly to communicate his message. And it is incredibly inspirational, whether you have vision loss or not. You just really want to hear this guy and you want to be around him. So all of you are really lucky, like I am, to be around him this morning. He's going to give you a lot to think about, and he's going to help us out and convey his message right now. Thank you, Charlie. He wants to stand, it feels better, so he's going to be over here. Take it away.
Did you know the number one thing that limits a blind person is their vision? Did you know the number one thing that limits a sighted person is their vision? And where there is no vision, people perish. It doesn't mean that you have macula and you're going to die. But it does mean what you'll see through my talk. I'll open up, I'll show you 3 keys to move through, making a decision, taking some action, and giving back. After 2 years of being in and out of doctor's offices, my parents and I, along with my 4 sisters and brother, jumped in the big old Plymouth green station wagon with the wood paneling on the side and the seat that faces the other way, and went up to Mass Ioneer. We had been in and out of psychiatrists. They didn't know what was going on with us. So we jumped in the car, and after extensive testing, We were sat down as a family, and the doctors told us 4 out of 6 of you are diagnosed, you have juvenile macular degeneration. Great, what's that? Well, we went back a few times over the course of a couple of years, and our last meeting the doctor wrote down, and there wasn't much the information. They used this as a family to test, but there wasn't much information he could give us when we left. But he did give us a list: no skiing, no sports, no. This is how you need to raise your kids, to my mother. And I'll tell you, my mother walked out of that office and the first garbage can that piece of paper went into. So that's a little side note to the caregivers: no enabling. It doesn't help us. So when I wanted to race cars, race motorcycles, be a jet fighter pilot. Heck, I even like to be Magnum. Nothing wrong with a Ferrari, hot chicks, and a gun. But that wasn't going to be my path, and I instantly went blind from my thinking. See, it was the doctor saying, what I heard was, Charlie, you're a loser. You're no longer going to be able to read or have a good life because you have an eye disease that I can do nothing about. See you later. And that's what I heard. I don't remember what he said, but that's what I heard. So I spent the next 13 years focusing on the problem. I can't read. I can't see the chalkboard. Heck, I can't even see the people coming at me in the hallway or all around me. Right now, it's a plus. I can't see you. So I'm not nervous. Don't go to sleep. Someone will tell me. So these things, what was happening to me though, my self-esteem was lowering, my depression was setting in, and the question of why am I on this earth was setting in. I will tell you, in high school, I did do one sport. I pole vaulted as a legally blind dude. But I barely got out of high school because I wasn't good enough. I didn't fit in anywhere. I was different. I felt alone. Even though I had 2 sisters and a brother, they were at home. I'm talking out there in the real world. And people didn't understand. I don't look legally blind. People still don't believe it at times because of the things I can do. So it was tough on me. And that's all I thought about, me and my problem. So college, I tried 3 times. I failed out 3 times. But I didn't. I feared out of college. I went through, and 21, still live with my parents, working as a landscaper. I worked at a motorcycle dealership cutting their lawn because I owned a motocross bike. You can ride in the woods. All right. Trees can't sue you. So I loved riding motocross bikes, and I went up there and I cut the lawn. And well, one day, I'm looking at the motorcycle. See, remember, we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. It's very important because I shut down my mind's eye when the doctor told me I was a loser. So I wasn't able to see, no longer did I see in the future, did I see me having a good life. Did I see me with the ability to read or enjoy things? I shut that down. But this day, for some reason, I was looking at the long line of motorcycles, and I could hear the engines, the wind was blowing, and I started going back into this vision. Because as Helen Keller said, the most pathetic person in the world is somebody who has sight but has no vision. That's Helen Keller. And that was me. I was a pathetic, legally blind guy. So this long, bearded, ZZ Top-looking dude came up when I was standing there and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Hey, Charlie." And it was the owner of the motorcycle dealership, and I thought right away, uh-oh, he's going to fire me. I didn't do it perfect. And he said, "I was wondering if you want to work here." I'm like, why would he ask a legally blind guy if he wants to work here? And how the heck did he know? I would love to, but what could I do? I can't see, I can't. And as I said yesterday, Henry Ford had a wonderful statement that said, if you think you can or can't, you're right. It's a belief. I heard MVRF say, believing is seeing. Ain't that the truth? I'm a legally blind guy with very clear vision. So was Helen Keller, and she couldn't hear. The grass is always greener, you know? So I take this position, and I went home, told my parents. My mother said, you should do this. You love motors, blah, blah, blah. And I laid in bed. I went to bed that night in the same bed I laid in many times, crying myself to sleep, questioning that God up there. Why me? Why'd you do this to me? And I finally kind of surrendered to my illness, my disease. It wasn't just this little drusins and the fovea and the macula and all that. It had affected all of me and my parents and everyone around me because I was angry. And I finally asked for help that night as I went to sleep. That next day, I made a decision. That's my first key. You make a decision. I went up there and I said, Jim, I'll take the job. I'm scared like crazy. I said, but you got to know something. I can't see that well. I need help. He said, oh, I knew that about you, but that's not why I'm hiring you. I see something in you that I believe you're going to do well in this position. So remember, sometimes others see in us what we don't see in ourselves. Thank God he saw that, because in a short amount of time, I got my first video magnifier from Optelect. I went right up and worked. I re-engaged my brain. My brain had been in atrophy. I started reading again. And in 3 short years, I went from the guy that was thinking about taking his life to a VP and part owner of a multi-million-dollar corporation. Couple more minutes? Okay. When you see dawn coming, you know something's happening. And I get a little nervous. But I don't think she can push me out of the way. So key 2 is take action. How did I take action? When I went into that motorcycle place, I asked for help. I surrendered. I'm not a loser because of my eye disease. I have abilities. I can do this. Heck, look what happened. Well, I left that dealership after 6 years, and I had another thought. Something had transformed in my life because I use a magnifier, a dark writing pen, bump dots. I use TV glasses. I use a handheld electronic. I use a desktop video magnifier. If you went in my environments, you would notice they are adapted for a guy with a vision impairment. And you want to know something? I go through most days never even having a thought I'm legally blind or have macular degeneration. Even when I'm at these things, I think, oh, I feel sorry for people. I have it. I forget. So, but that's because I've accepted it. I've taken action. I educate and implement. And like you guys, you're the winners. You got up and came here today. So I opened a business that houses and helps people suffering with vision loss. I have one guy's 106. He's on his 3rd desktop video magnifier and his 3rd book. He started his first book at 98. God bless him. He's still cranking along. He walks faster than me. So you're all a success story. I want to just end with step 3, key 3, giving back. You know when you do something in life and you get the pearls and the awakening within, and the only way to keep that is to give back. See, in the motorcycle business, I fell back into depression. I wasn't helping. I wasn't making a difference in the life of people. I was making money and selling motorcycles. Something wasn't working inside of me. So all of a sudden in my new business, I'm giving my gifts back. And because of that, I have more peace. There's a simple rule. The more you give, the more you get. And the more you give, the clearer your vision will get. Whether it's giving to MVRF, whether it's buying something, investing in your life, or whether it's going back to your communities and knowing Betty or Matilda, it truly has something going on and they're starting to isolate. Well, I'm going to reach out and share my success and share what I know and help that person. Thank you all for staying awake, and I'm going to go sit down.
Wow, huh? How about that? I hope that Charlie's story stays in your heart and never leaves you and you share it with others. I think by the nods and smiles in the audience, I think that's what's going to happen. So Dr. Brucker does need to leave shortly. We'll start the panel discussion. And again, this is questions and answers. I know there were a few questions out there that for Dr. Brucker that didn't get answers. So we'll see if we can do, Lynn's bringing the mic up. And we've got him for a few minutes, and we're very lucky to have him. So let's start with Dr. Brucker. I'm going
to say one thing first. You can go ahead, Alf, because I know that you're going to have questions about low vision and all to ask the others. And I do have a patient waiting, so I have to go. But apropos to that, a question was asked of me at the break, and it was really an important question. Dr. Brucker, do you keep your patients waiting 3 hours? Why are you laughing? Look at her. She's cackling away back there.
She's rolling over there.
She's been there, man. She's been on the bottom of the line. The bottom line is the following, that all of us, and when I say all of us who have a heart, all of us who care, don't want you sitting in our offices for 3 hours. Believe me. And it's not because I'm sitting out there having a coffee break or running around doing something. It's because that's the way the nature of this kind of practice is. A patient comes in, they have a 9 o'clock appointment, they may get seen at 9:15, they get worked up, and instead of taking 5 minutes, it may take 15 or 20 minutes. Next thing you know, you get your dilating drops, it's already 10 o'clock or 10:15, you have to go get your OCTs, that's the pictures we take. Next thing you know, you're coming back, you're waiting in the lobby because Dr. Brucker's sitting there doing a laser on a retinal tear or detachment. Next thing you're there 2 hours, what the heck is he doing? Believe me, I'm not in the bathroom. And the next thing you know, it's 3 hours before we're laying the patient back to give them their injection. The issue is that nobody wants to wait 3 hours. I don't like to wait 3 hours for my doctor's appointment. If I knew how to do it differently, I would. I don't know how to do it differently, but I will tell you that every single one of you who have been in a doctor's office probably have had that experience, and we all apologize to you. You know, there's people who come up, and we had a meeting about this 2 weeks ago. They said, well, why don't you go out to the lobby and tell people you're delayed? I said, how can I do that? If I take time out every 15 minutes to go to the lobby and tell them I'm delayed, I'll never be inside the room. So it doesn't make any sense, and I would just ask all of you to understand that you don't need to be told that we're there. You don't need to be told that we're working as hard as we can. You just need to understand that we know you're in the lobby. We know that you're waiting to be seen, and we really do respect your time and your applications of your appointments and everything else, and we just apologize. I'm sorry for it. But in any case, I just wanted to clarify that. I know it gets asked all the time. You had a question up here in the front?
Here we go.
And I do need to leave. I apologize. Go ahead.
Are any of the stem cell trials as far as stage 3?
There are stem cell trials that are going on in London, in the United States, and they are not at stage 3 that I'm aware of. They most certainly are at stage 2, phase 2. But I don't know of any stage 3 that are going on, but there may be. You know, it's a rapidly changing arena, and when that happens, unless I went online yesterday to look it up, I don't know of any new studies that are being done. I know that I haven't been approached with any new studies to do. The studies that are out there that we have been approached to do, we know what phase they're in. Yes, next question. One last one, and then I do have to turn the microphone.
Here you go.
Oh, there you go.
I'd like to ask a question about Avastin, Lucentis, and Eylea.
Okay.
Is there evidence that any of those work better than the other?
The gentleman in the back asked the same question. I'm sorry you may not have heard the answer, but the answer is that they are all basically the same. They're all anti-VEGF medications, and they basically work the same. We have some patients that we're giving Eylea to every month, and then we'll switch them after a period of time to Lucentis because it's not working. And then we have patients who are on Eylea, and we switch them to Avastin because the Eylea isn't working, and we have patients on Avastin that we switch to Lucentis. So we use them interchangeably in many cases. There have been studies of Lucentis and Eylea. There have not been major randomized trials of Avastin.
Is Eylea also an injection?
Excuse me?
Is Eylea an injection?
They're all 3 injections, yes.
No one is doing it in pill form yet?
Yeah, there are formulations that are being developed for the different drugs, and those formulations include topical. I don't know of anybody that's doing it in oral, in a pill form of those 3, but I know that topical is being investigated.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that I have to leave, but you have 3 experts here that can answer your questions. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for supporting SupportSight.
Thank you, Dr. Brucker. Let's hope the people who are there don't have to wait till you get there.
With the type of quality of care that Dr. Brucker gives to...
Oh, he's got a plan.
He's worth the wait.
All right, that's wonderful.
I said, as long as you're standing in a line, you know you're alive.
Thank you again, Dr. Brucker. Be careful on the way to work. Okay. All right, so let me just introduce, we've got one new face up on the panel that we've added, another expert from a different point of view, no pun intended. But one of the objectives that we try to think about and we hear from people as we field calls in the foundation office is that a lot of the questions that you have and millions of other people like you, they're not just for the retina guy. You know, you want to know other things like nutrition, like are there other methods out there for me to incorporate in my life? What do people do about lighting? What do people do about, if I've fallen and the reason, maybe you live in a retirement community and you've fallen down and the reason you've fallen is because of vision loss. That's on the rise. Those incidences are on the rise. So we've added another professional expert to our panel, and it's Dr. Steve Whitaker. Raise your hand. Thank you. And what's really cool about Dr. Whitaker is he's an occupational therapist, which, by the way, is one of the growing professions in the country because of the aging population. Okay, so if your grandkids are looking at OT, they should pursue that. But Steve's actually been in it for more than 30 years, and he's a certified low vision specialist as an occupational therapist, which is incredibly unique. Steve's been teaching, doing research, and providing clinical services in low vision for decades. And Steve is associated with the Moore Eye Institute and does work with Dr. Georgia Crozier, whom we heard from earlier, who is also on our panel, and also at Moss Rehab. Might recognize that name, and I actually used to work at Einstein, and Moss Rehab is near and dear to my heart. So Steve is on deck here to provide his insights as well. So Lynn, do you have the microphone going around? Okay. All right, questions for the panel? I have one, somebody doesn't. Okay, could one of you talk about low-tech solutions in your everyday life that are different ideas and tips to share with the audience? I know Charlie's got a great sock story that we've got to hear, but let's hear from the others as well.
One of the probably the most important changes you can make that might improve your vision, it has a lot to do with lighting. Now, I think everyone who has a macular degeneration understands that lighting is very important for them, but what to do to optimize the lighting is something that you can learn about and improve. What's best light for one person may be very different than what's best light for the other. But I'm going to just give you two little tips. First of all, get a directional light. One of the biggest technological improvements in the last year has been in flashlights. You have now a portable, high-intensity LED light that you can keep in your pocket and use. The best way to change the light levels, now this is what differs from person to person. Some people don't like very much light, some people like lots of light, is to change the distance of the light. Don't go around changing light bulbs. Just change the distance of the light. Try to keep the light from the side. That's one. And then the other general advice is to avoid glare. Now, glare is sometimes hard to notice, but here's a way to identify glare. If you can sit where you are and see a light, a bright light, it is a glare source and should be avoided. And sometimes you can avoid it just by turning to the side. Another way to get rid of glare is to wear a hat with a brim. I see a few people here have them. They are very effective in controlling light levels. This is just stuff you can try, experiment with on your own. We have, with Dr. Crozier, we have a number of different kinds of sunglasses, tinted sunglasses that help with glare control. But when we do our evaluations, the first thing I do is I work on light because it sometimes has the greatest impact on a person's ability to see.
I think Charlie's got a comment.
I was going to share a story, not a long one. I was constantly running over to the window with my brown, black, blue socks, pants. I could never tell if they were black or blue, jacket. So I used to get irritated when it was time to get dressed because somebody would always say, "You have blue socks on." Well, don't look. You know, it's not bothering me. So I decided to put a true color lamp on top of my dresser with a nice, I click it, not only does it allow me to see what's up there and the dust that needs to be cleaned, when I open the drawer, I can clearly see my socks. And I can pull them out. I know exactly what I'm doing. I can match well. And then I said, well, if it works so well here, why not put this in my closet? Why not put this everywhere in my house? And the better you increase the quality of your environment, the better life gets.
That's great, right? Practical. I see lots of nods in the audience. Like, put a light on your dresser and put your socks in the top drawer. That's a great idea. I think we have one over here.
I've had some questions recently about the LED bulbs, and I'm honestly not sure what characteristics they have in terms of lighting versus the CFLs.
Can someone on the panel field the new technology in the bulbs? Yeah. Did you stump the panel? I don't know.
No. LED is the way to go. Just, there's lamps that have kind of like the tube-type lighting made by Verilux, OttLight, Daylight. Those all use, some use LED, some use tube types of lighting that lasts 5 to 7 years. But LED lighting rocks because it draws a lot less electricity. It uses a bright white. Some have bluish, depending on the intensity of it. And for magnifiers and things, they last forever. So personally, if I'm going to use incandescent, I don't. I've removed it all out of my life. But it's all LED and true color, daylight lighting throughout everywhere is the way to go.
Okay, got some more hands.
Okay, I have a slightly different opinion on this. I find, in general, LED lighting is much better. It's much more intense. But there are people who find it too much glare from that kind of light. So what we usually do is we do a comparison of different types of lights. So if you find the LED type lighting is too much glare, sometimes you can add filters to cut the blue light is the part of the spectrum that gives you the worst glare. And you can see that when you see those headlights coming at you at night that we all hate. And So lighting is to some extent an individual preference.
All right, great information. Lynn, you need a partner here, huh?
What kind of a light did you put in the closet? I don't understand, you know, I know about the LED lighting, but I didn't know that you could install that in other rooms very easily.
Closets are a bit of a challenge, and what I've been doing lately is I've just been suggesting people buy a high-intensity flashlight, you know, and because you can shine them right where you want to see. Yep.
That's a good idea.
You asked about lighting. I put 4-foot tubes made by Verilux in my closet with a switch, so you want to see some light in my closet. We could have a party in there.
You just have to be careful to position it so it's not shining directly into your eyes. You don't want it to cause glare.
Okay.
I just wanted clarification from what Charlie was saying as far as the true color light. Were you talking about LCD lights?
Well, let me just explain lighting. They rate it in Kelvin. So it could be 3,500, 4,500, 5,500, and 6,500. 6,500 is the bluish white one that is ridiculously irritating. Well, for me, as a macular degenerate. So, but I don't know that for everybody. 55 is a little softer, a little more white in it. 45 is even a little softer, and so it's Kelvin rating. It steps up. When the higher the Kelvin, the more intense, a little bit more shielding you need around the bulb. But boy, does it give you a good light on the surface. Is that right?
Good.
We have a question over here.
Where do you go for good lighting specialists?
Can we just interject? I'm sorry. One last question on lighting. Where do you go for a good lighting specialist? Okay.
You could call your low vision doctor, Steve, Charlie, you know, people in the industry who are helping those with lighting. You can get an Optolec catalog. We carry all the lamps. You don't want to go to your local hardware store.
Not many stores around specialize in that type of lighting. I've seen catalogs, but no outlet stores that I know of.
In low vision rehabilitation, a very important part of what we know is not just about magnification devices, it's also about lighting. So Dr. Crozier and I do lighting evaluations, and most of the time we do refer people to special outlets to get specialized lighting. But sometimes it can be met in a hardware store. It depends on the individual.
So maybe you can talk one-on-one with the folks after and get some ideas, and that'd be good. That's what they're here for.
That's an important walk-away message is, you know, there are very few off-the-rack solutions here with lighting or anything else. We really have to customize our solutions to individuals.
Good, okay.
Okay, thank you. The information on these aids is invaluable to all of us, but I want to ask, separate to visual aids, does the foundation support or make available information that kind of, you know, supports the overall psyche? I mean, the human side, you know, companionship,
Sure.
and just various, you know.
Absolutely, I'll take that one. Very good question, because as we heard from Charlie earlier, spoke straight to that. There's a lot going on besides just not being able to see, right, Charlie? Yes. So of course, as all of you know, MVRF is very focused on finding a cure, and we're going to get that job done, by the way. I just want to let you know that. But what we also do is this SupportSight program. And it's not only the seminars that you're attending today, and we do those in other cities across the country. We also have the SupportSight newsletter, and this goes out 3 times a year. And hopefully all of you, if you don't currently receive it, you've registered and you will receive it. It's free. And it is chock full of information. We get so many calls and comments from people. They look forward to it. It's a tremendous source. And I know I'm biased about that, but it really is a wonderful source of information. We've got articles on the research, articles on the latest in prevention and treatment. We've got menus, so it addresses nutrition and diet, as we all know is important. And we also have articles submitted to us on kind of the psychosocial support for coping with the disease. And then the third leg of our SupportSight program is we do provide materials and resources for local SupportSight peer-based groups. So what I mean by that is we've got a few throughout the country in retirement communities and other neighborhoods that are led by individuals like all of you, bring a group together to convene a conversation, to share stories, share tips. Again, they tell me it's not all about complaining, right? Like Charlie said, what is your phrase, Charlie, about not being able to see and sight? We see with our brains. So those groups, we do support the resources, and we've got a few in the Philadelphia area. So I hope that addresses your question. And we'll get you involved, your mother involved. We're happy you're here.
In the team that we develop in low vision rehabilitation, we've really identified that as an important component. Charlie's lecture, in his presentation, it was about his reaction to his vision loss, not about his vision. And we find that's central to consider in low vision rehabilitation. And in fact, occupational therapy, that's one of the reasons this profession has moved into the field of low vision rehabilitation, is that's what we pay attention to. We listen, we pay attention to where a person is and try to bring and draw them to the next step with patience and tolerance and consideration, and involving the family.
That's great.
We have a question.
You have one more comment on that, Charlie?
Well, I wanted to just say, my book is coming out soon, and when you all buy it, most of the proceeds are going to go to MVRF. So, and
All right.
Wow, that's the first I've heard of that. Thank you,
I didn't tell
Charlie.
Dawn yet. Secondly, I have a question. Is this on?
Yeah.
Dr. Crozier, are there glasses for people with macular degeneration?
Oh, Charlie's got a question. Okay.
There is not one pair of glasses or one magnifier or one telescope that works for every patient with macular to solve all problems. And that's the key. It's your level of unhappiness with something you're trying to do that will motivate you to see the low vision specialist and report that difficulty or that challenge you're facing. And then it really is the job of the low vision specialist to prescribe something and to have you work with the occupational therapist to make sure you know how to use it correctly. Because there's nothing more frustrating for us than if you've bought something out of a catalog, paid $100 for it, it doesn't work for what you wanted it to work for, and then you never see anybody else. So we've lost a patient that we could have potentially helped. And that's what I meant when I said, I don't want you to buy things from a catalog, because you may not buy what's your best option, nor is there anybody coming with that catalog to teach you how to use it. The one other thing that when Dawn talked about low tech, I wanted to add in, lighting has two components. One is the glare it can produce, and the other is the contrast it can enhance. So contrast is a very significant part of vision rehabilitation. Patients, anybody here have difficulty seeing food on their plate, or having difficulty writing a phone number down that somebody gave you over the phone and then you can't see it again? Or difficulty picking out the blue pants that match the blue jacket? That's all contrast. So it's important that the lighting is enhanced, but you can do little things, put a blue tablecloth on if you have white dinner dishes. Or, if you're going to have coffee, use a white mug so you know when you get to the top. If you have pills that you take and you put them in a pill dispenser, make sure that the pill dispenser is the opposite color of the pills. So if you have white pills that you take, use a blue pill dispenser so you see the contrast. So that's the other low-tech thing that you can all do on your own. It's very simple. Using the pens that were given out on white paper will be much easier to see, and write big.
then you don't have to use a magnifier. Right big when you take a phone number down.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one
I have
more.
a question over here. This lady's been waiting.
Okay.
There is literature that talks about the presence of mercury in these LEDs. And when you dispose of the used material, that it should be directed to places for accepting mercury products that have mercury in them, like your hazardous waste that you have around your house. When they have collections around the city, the few places that they have for you to.
I think you're referring to those curly Q lights, we call them CFLs. Yeah, many of them have mercury in them, and yes, they should be disposed of through a hazardous waste collection.
Is that true?
The LED lights, though, do not have mercury in them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more? One more question? The panelists will be around for a few minutes after, too, folks. I think you've had your hand up a lot, haven't you?
Who had their
Up here, Lynn. And the right. Can you wait to the microphone? So thank you, so people can hear.
Many times the bulbs that have the mercury in them will be accepted by a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a hardware store that sells them. They'll take them back and take them to the recycling place for you that accepts mercury.
Okay, it's good to know we have a green crowd here.
We have one more question.
Any other question related to macular degeneration or low vision?
Yeah, okay. Here we go. We'll give you a chance.
Hi, could you quickly touch on nutrition and exercise related to macular degeneration?
Okay, Georgia, maybe you want to field that one? Good question.
Question was in reference to nutrition and exercise in terms of macular degeneration. As Dr. Brucker mentioned, the two types of macular degeneration, one is treatable with injections, the wet, and the dry currently does not have any approved treatment. So the best advice for patients that have dry has been for many years good nutrition and exercise. Exercise appropriate for the patient's personal health. Nutrition includes the vitamins, the C, the E, the zeaxanthin and lutein, the zinc, and the copper. But good nutrition also involves real food, not just the supplements. And they're recommending 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And the brighter the color, the more dense the pigment of the nutrition. So examples might be that plums, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries would be better choices than potatoes and bananas. And people always say, well, I eat bananas because of my high blood pressure medicine. I have to keep my potassium levels accurate. And that's true. You can still eat a banana, but you should also eat 5 servings. People say, I can't eat spinach because I'm on Coumadin. So eat string beans, eat broccoli, eat zucchini. But the thing is, the brighter the color, the more nutrition available. Fresh vegetables and frozen vegetables are better sources of nutrition than canned vegetables. And people say, well, I have difficulty getting to the supermarket. Well, when you go stock up, the frozen stuff, just take a little bit out at a time. It's better to eat frozen than canned, and it's better to eat fresh.
Good. Okay. Before we close, and again, we promise to be on time, let's give one more round of applause to our wonderful, esteemed panel. And Dr. Brucker. Okay. 2 very quick things. If you parked in the Bourse, please remember to have your parking voucher so it's free. And if you have not gotten one, please, Pat's over here. She's got them. Make sure you have that with you. The second thing is, let me see my notes here. We talked about this will be available on video and on YouTube. Download your app. For the gentleman that I think he might have left who are still here about the stem cell trial phase 3, I can get you some information. Make sure we get your name. And I think that's it. So what can I say? Thank you for coming and have a wonderful day. And Thanks again.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.